In this class, I'll be solving this question on oligopoly as non-collusive oligopoly model. This is question 4. Suppose there are two firms in the market. The market demand function is P equals 100 minus Q, where Q equals Q1 plus Q2. Each of the firms faces a constant marginal cost and average cost of $10. Assuming firm 1 chooses output first, what is the best response function of firm 2, and B, determine the profit maximizing level of output. Okay, now we have solution here. If firm 1 moves first, that means firm 1 is the leader while firm 2 is the follower in this market. So now we determine the best response function of the follower. What we are going to do is that we are going to first write out the demand function, this demand function, and we are going to replace this Q with Q1 plus Q2. In other words, P is equals to 100 minus Q1 minus Q2. Don't forget to replace, you put it here. For example, plug it here, this is plus. By the time you expand this minus times Q1, it becomes minus Q1. The minus times plus becomes minus. That's how we got minus Q1 minus Q2. Hope you understand that. So this function is seen as what we call residual demand function now. Residual demand function because from this function we can see it as removing the output of firm 2 from the total demand, or seeing it in form of removing output of firm 1 from total demand. So this is known as residual demand function. Okay, now having gotten our residual demand function, so the next thing is to find the total revenue, that is residual total revenue. So total revenue, so that is the total revenue of the total revenue of the follower, that is the follower is firm 2. Don't forget, will be equal to the price multiplied by Q2. And this will be equal to, this is the price. We have 100 minus Q1 minus Q2, then multiplied by Q2. Then TR, our TR will equal to 100 minus that 100 Q2 minus Q1 Q2. Then we have minus Q2 squared. This is total revenue of the follower, which is firm 2. Then we can derive the marginal revenue function of firm 2. In other words, we can have the marginal revenue of firm 2 equals the TR2 over the Q2 with different respect to Q2. So here we have 100. You differentiate this one, this Q, this is Q2, it becomes 100. Differentiate this one, we have Q1, then here we have 2Q2. Okay, and now remember the profit maximization rule. The profit maximization rule. Rule R equals to MC. Okay, now MR equals to MC. If I continue here, what is my MR? MR is 100 minus Q1 minus Q2 Q2. Then equals MC. MC is 10. So we connect the like terms. So here we have 100 minus 10 equal to, because we want to calculate the reaction function of M2 minus 10, so then I have minus Q1. I'm not taking to that side, I'm only taking the term that has Q2. This is Q2 Q2. Okay, now the next thing is this 90 minus Q1 equals to Q2. Okay, then we divide both sides by the question of Q2. In order to make Q2 the formula, the solving the formula, we have 90 minus Q1 over 2 equals to Q2. Okay, this same thing can be rewritten as Q2 equals 90 over 2 minus Q1 over 2, then Q2 equals 45 minus Q1 over 2. Okay, this is the reaction function of firm 2, which is the follower in this market. This is the reaction function of firm 2, which is the follower in this market. Okay, that is question A. That is the best response function. So the next question says determine the profit maximizing output level. So before you can determine that, you also need to find the reaction function of this reaction function. Okay, don't forget the profit maximizing output level. So we need to first find the total revenue of 1, which is the leader. Okay, it's going to be equals to P multiplied by Q1. Okay, but before we do that, recall the P is equals to 100 minus Q1 minus Q2. Okay, now we also recall that the reaction function of 2 we got, that is Q2 is equals to, that is, recall that the Q2 we got is equal to 45 minus Q1 over 2. So now we are going to use this reaction function by substitute. We are going to substitute this reaction function into this demand function, this residual demand function. If you do that, we have P equals 100 minus Q1. Then we have minus, okay, 45 minus Q1 over 2. Okay, what we can do now is to open this bracket. We have P equals 100 minus Q1, then minus 45. We have plus Q1 over, this can be same 2. Okay, we multiply through by 2, that is multiply both sides by 2. That to be P equal, this is 100 minus 45, then we write minus Q1 plus Q1 over 2, okay, Q1 over 2. Then here, mind you, this Q1 over 2 can be rewritten as 1 over 2 Q1, 1 over 2 Q1, that is 0.5 Q1, okay. So this P can be written as 55, then we have minus Q1 plus 1 over 2 Q1. So that's going to give us minus 1 over 2 Q1. Okay, minus 1 over 2 Q1. Now, the next thing is to find the revenue of this firm, that's the leader. TR1 is equal to P multiplied by Q1. This is our P now. We have 55 minus 1 over 2 Q1, then multiply by Q1. So here, the revenue we got here will be equal to 55 Q1 minus 1 over 2 Q1 squared. This is total revenue of the leader in the market. Okay. Now, the next thing is to derive the marginal revenue from this total revenue. Don't forget the marginal revenue of this firm 1 is equal to the TR1 over the Q1. So when you differentiate that one, the TR1 over the Q1, differentiate that, we have 55, okay, then minus 2 times 1 over 2, that is 1, then we have Q1, okay. This is the marginal revenue of the leading firm, okay. Now, let me do the rest here, because of space. Then you recall the profit maximization rule that MR equals MC. In this words, MR1 is equal to MC. What is our MR1? MR1 is 55 minus Q1, then equal to the marginal cost, which is 10. We are given, then we have 55 minus 10 equals Q1. Then when you subtract this one, the answer is what? 45 is equals to Q1. So Q1 is equals to 45. Q1 is equals to 45. Okay. Now we know the output of firm 1 is 45. What of the output of firm 2? So we are going to record the reaction function of firm 2 that we got earlier. Okay, the reaction function of firm 2 that we got earlier, that Q2 equals to 45 minus Q1 over 2. Then we have Q2 equals 45 minus Q1, we got 45 over 2. 45 over 2. over 2. Then when we solve this, we have Q2 equals to 45 minus 45 divided by 2. Divided by 2, we have 22.5. Then Q2 equals 22.5 units. Okay, in other words, Q1, the output of firm 1 is 45 and that of firm 2 is equal to 22.5. Meaning that firm 2 produces half of what firm 1 produces. Thank you.